I'm Filthy Casual, and this is Token Run, a new series where we see how long it takes to earn a WoW token while playing just a few hours each week. And this is Mogbro, your humble adventure guide. Mogbro is a fresh level 80 druid with no money, no fancy mounts, and a dream to one day become a goblin. The premise is simple. Pick a method and stick to it until I have earned enough gold to purchase a WoW token at the current market price. The catch? I only have a few hours to play each week. I've been playing WoW on and off since 2004. Now, as an adult with a full-time job, wife, and 2 young kids, my playtime is limited to 1 to 2 hours a few times a week. Recently, I've been living vicariously through a few YouTubers, and this series is definitely inspired by Pathalerix's Goldbound series, but I wanted to take a slightly different approach. For this series, I want to take you along a journey with me as a filthy casual, and hopefully show that it's possible to earn a respectable amount of gold without playing 6 to 8 hours per day. We won't be going for gold cap, but I'll be happy if I can reliably purchase a WoW token every month. For the first token run, we'll be starting with something I've always enjoyed, Transmog farming. People say the Transmog market is dead. They say nothing ever sells, and that farming it is a waste of time. So naturally, that seems like a good place to start. And I actually like Transmog farming. I like the RNG aspect of it and the dopamine hits you get when LootAppraiser plays that ding sound and flashes a huge price on the screen. For the uninitiated, old dungeons from classic WoW have unique appearances for armor and weapons that people purchase, sometimes for thousands of gold. The rules are simple. I can only make gold from farming for transmog items. Anything looted, including trade goods, can be sold to vendors or on the auction house. But that's it. No gathering, no crafting, no flipping. But Mogbro isn't alone on this journey. He is aided by his 3 foxy companions, Mogbank 1, Mogbank 2, and Mogbank 3. Don't worry about the names. These 3 adventuring pals will be hard at work selling our wares while we continue to farm. Our first objective is simple. Get to 1,000 items listed on the auction house. To start building that inventory, and to kick off the series, we'll be running 3 popular transmog dungeons this week. Our first stop this week is Zul'Farrak, home to the ruthless Sandfury trolls. It's also one of the most popular transmog farms in the game, thanks to its broad loot table, attractive plate sets, and relatively fast sell rates compared to most transmog items. It's also the perfect length to run repeatedly without hitting the 10 dungeon per hour lockout limit, but that's not something we'll be taking advantage of. Specifically, I'm hoping to see pieces from sets like Glorious, Vanguard, and Jade. Zul'Farrak also drops several unique blue items with high values that we'll be on the lookout for. And we're off to a good start. The first item drops almost immediately. Potent Pants, a random green with a market value of 2,800 gold. That's nice and all, but it's basically fantasy unless it sells. Let's keep going. Here we see why Zul'Farrak is so popular. Multiple, high-value items drop every run. This helps move us closer to the first goal of 1,000 items, and hopefully these become sales in the near future. After 10 runs, we walk away with exactly 50 items worth keeping. And we did find some of those unique blue drops I mentioned earlier, the Troll Protector, Minotaur, and Eye Gouger. Great items, if they sell. After a long night of farming, Mogbro gets some rest, and wakes up ready for day 2. Our next stop this week is Razorfen Downs, the ancestral burial ground of the Quillboar, and one of my personal favorites for transmog. RFD is home to several popular sets, particularly the Saltstone Armor set. It also has several very high-value drops, like Manslayer and Bone Slasher. Despite the low drop rates, I've always had pretty good luck picking up some decent blue items here, and I'm hoping that today is no different. Our first item drops 1 minute into the first run, and the pile continues to grow from there. There's also a special item in RFD, the recipe for Goldthorn Tea. While it's not exactly Transmog, I'll grab 3 of these, one for each of the bankers. RFD has several chest spawns, and I usually open 1 to 2 per run. These have always been a great source for high value items. And in our second run, we pick up a huge drop, the leatherworking pattern for dusky boots. This is why I love Transmog. You never know when something like this is going to drop. The market value is almost 200,000 gold, and if it sells for that amount, that's almost an entire token by itself. Honestly, I'll probably price this at a steep discount for a quicker sale. Even at 50,000 gold, it would be a huge step towards the token. The remaining runs carry on uneventfully, and then at the beginning of the final run, we strike gold again with Quill Shooter, one of those unique BRD items. Like the Dusky Boots, I'll probably price this around half of market value to try to make some progress on the token. I'm not going for gold cap, and a 25,000 gold sale would be a great value to me. 10 runs and 50 minutes later, Razorfin Down adds 57 more items to our inventory, bringing our total so far to 107 items. Still a long way from 1,000, but it's starting to feel like we're making progress. Next, we venture into the watery depths of Black Fathom Deeps. Like the others, BFD is another very popular transmog farm. It's pretty long and doesn't have the same mob density as the others, but the loot table includes a few high-value sets like Spiked Chain, Pagan, and Hulking. There are also several unique blue drops like Grimclaw and Onyx Claymore. "35 minutes in, and we hit it big with the Onyx Claymore. Same story as before, I'll price it low and look to get an early win. Even at 75% off, it's still almost 100,000 gold. 42 minutes in, and we get our second BOE blue, the Evocator's Blade. Not as valuable at 29,000 gold, but hey, we'll take it. 10 runs later, and we add another 49 items to the pile, bringing our total to 156 items listed. I had some extra time this week, and was also feeling excited about the series, so I added a bonus open world farm. I'll add bonus farms on occasion as my schedule allows, and this area in the Northern Barrens is my favorite open world transmog farm. It shares a loot table with several dungeons, and for whatever reason, it does not seem to be impacted by the open world loot drop nerf. Basically, you fly around and kill the Korkron destroyers and the 5 or 6 guys around them to quickly build up a nice inventory. We collected 45 new items in 30 minutes, making it the most efficient farm so far this week, and bringing our total item count to 201. That's not bad for the first week, but we still have a long way to go. Every day, I send all the items to the bank alts through the Warband Bank. My process is simple. Everything goes to Mogbank 1, any duplicates get sent to Mogbank 2, and any triplicates go to Mogbank 3. If I have more than 3 of an item, I just vendor it. Although it's only been a few days, let's see if anything has actually sold. Okay, unsurprisingly, we've seen some immediate sales from trade goods that I've looted, like cloth, meat, and gems. Not exactly impressive, but it's a start. And I don't believe this, but we actually sold a piece of transmog that we picked up in our open world farm for over 40,000 gold. That's a huge step towards the token, but I will say that this is not normal, and I don't expect to see these types of sales every week. Alright, let's tally it all up. My total time played this week was 4.5 hours. My total items listed is 200, because we had that one sale, and total gold in the bank, 42,342. This was a productive first week and a great start to the series. Zul'Farrak gave us a strong start, a lot of solid pieces, good variety, and exactly what we needed to begin building out the auction house. It's clear why it's a favorite among transmog farmers. RFD might have been the highlight. Ton of items, great mix of pieces, and a few really high value drops. And then Black Fathom Deeps rounded things out with more inventory and a few more really great pieces to throw in the mix as well. The bonus farm in Northern Barrens was really icing on the cake, especially because it generated a 40,000 gold sale almost immediately. We're off to a great start so far, but before we end the week, we need to find out where we'll be going next week. Let's see where we'll be going first. Kicking the week off with Blackrock Depths. That's a massive dungeon, so that should be fun. Stratholme next. Not my favorite, but the spinner has spoken. And finally, we'll return to Blackrock Mountain for Lower Blackrock Spire.
In the shadow of Blackrock Mountain lies a kingdom carved from fire and stone, once ruled by the dark iron dwarves. These halls now guard treasures long forgotten.
Which means it's time for Mogbro to do some farming. Our first stop is Blackrock Depths, and I kinda forgot just how big this place is. So going into this, I'm already expecting fewer runs than last week, but hopefully that won't have a big impact on the number of items we get. So the question is, does spending more time in a dungeon like this actually pay off? Blackrock Depths has several different farm routes within it, but mine is pretty straightforward. I grab all the mobs in the detention block and the Halls of Law, head through the East Garrison door, up the stairs, and around the upper level of the Ring of Law. Basically just grabbing everything I can. I wind my way through the domicile before jumping off the ledge and waiting for everyone to group up. This should be a pretty big pull. Once everything is stacked up, kill and loot. This is where it, hopefully, pays off. We're getting a lot of low-value items, but we only need a few of them to sell, and hopefully we can make up for low prices with high volume. I actually like this route. It's slower than I'd want, but seeing so many numbers flashing on the screen with big pulls like this is pretty satisfying. One thing I make sure to check while I'm here is the relic coffers. These can drop the dark iron baby booties, which look like vendor trash, but they're actually used to purchase the topaz bobbleworm pet. It's just one of those weird items that ends up being worth way more than it should be. Each run took me almost 10 minutes, so I only had time for 5 runs this week. So the question is, does the extra time actually translate into more items? And after 5 runs, this is what we ended up with. 37 items, which is a bit less than last week, but still a respectable haul. This brings us to 237 items listed. Most of these items are in the 500 to 1000 gold range, but at this stage we're still after volume, so it's not the end of the world by any means. From here, we head over to Stratholme in the Eastern Plaguelands. This place is much more linear than BRD, and the runs are much quicker, so the goal here is to move quickly and make up some ground. At least, that was the plan. I started on the undead side, which I quickly learned is worse than the live side, since it has the same loot table, but the live side also drops righteous orbs, which, while not transmog, add a little bit to our coffers when they sell. Not off to a great start. On the live side, the route is simple. Grab absolutely everything and drag the entire dungeon into the room of the final boss. And then, hope it was worth it. Yeah, that was not great. I figured maybe that was just a bad run, so I ran it again. And again. Still nothing. Literally nothing. I've never liked this dungeon, and this is not helping. This is kind of the downside with this type of RNG farming. Sometimes you just don't hit anything. At this point, I was just trying to get as many runs in as I could before my hour was up. So after all that, we add 32 items to the auction house. which honestly isn't terrible, but it sure felt terrible during the runs. The runs were fast, but I just didn't see the same volume of drops we saw in last week's dungeons. If you're doing this casually, this might not be the best place to spend your time, and I'll be removing Stratholme from future spinners. Alright, let's move on and see if we can recover here. Last stop this week, Lower Blackrock Spire. This one is a little different. There's really only one reason people run LBRS, and that's for the plans for the Arcanite Champion, which can only drop from Overlord Wormthalok. But it's rare. Really rare. So I'm not getting my hopes up. Actually, I'd be shocked if we saw it. The runs are definitely slow compared to Strath, but there are more drops, so it feels more rewarding, even if they're not worth a whole lot. Ran it a few times. No Arcanite Champion. But even without any big drops, the items just kept stacking up, and I think this is going better than I expected. And that's kind of the whole point of transmog farming. We're not relying on one lucky drop, as fun as they are to get. We're building volume. After about an hour, I wasn't expecting anything special, but here's what we got. 69 more items, bringing our total item count up to 338. So after all that, did anything actually sell this week? Okay, moment of truth. Lots of trade goods sales again. Looks like we did sell one piece of transmog for 166 gold. Not exactly a home run, but it's something. And we did sell over 4,600 gold in trade goods this week. Let's collect this and tally everything up. For week 2, I played about 3.5 hours, bringing our total time played so far to 8 hours. And because we had the one sale, our total item count is 337. Total gold this week was 7,624, and our total gold for the series is 49,966. So that's where we stand at the end of week 2. Not as good as week 1, but we're still building the machine and inching forward with a long road ahead. Let's see where we're headed next week. Maradon. I've actually never been to Maradon for Transmog, so this will be fun to see how it performs. Dungeon number 2. Sunken Temple. That's mostly known as a skinning farm, but we'll see what we can uncover. Last but not least, Wailing Caverns. That helps because it has a ton of drops and no overlap with the other two. So there you have it. 2 weeks down and 3 new dungeons to try out next week. The spinner tells us where to go, but that doesn't mean we can't get more out of each run. So before I jump into the dungeon runs, I'm going to make a longer-term investment. Since I'm only playing about an hour each night, I need to get more runs in, which means I need to move faster. So I headed to Zuldazar to pick up the Heart of Azeroth so that I can farm up some Azerite gear. Specifically, I'm after pieces with the Long Strider effect, which scales movement speed based on your stats. There are tons of guides on how to do this, so I'll skip the details and go straight to the farming. I'll start in the Motherlode, looking for the Venture Company Plenipotentiary Vest. I've done this grind once before and it wasn't bad, so I'm hoping this doesn't take too long. Okay, not on the first run. Not this time either. There it is. 3rd time's the charm. From there, I head over to Freehold for the gold-tasseled epaulets from the final boss. We have about a 5% drop chance according to Wowhead, but I'd be surprised if it took us 20 runs. Swing and a miss. Nice, 2 down. Last stop, Tol Dagor for the Flash Powder Hood. 4% chance to drop. Hopefully our luck continues. Well, nobody gets it on the first try. But with a little patience, there it is. In total, this side venture took about 90 minutes and added about 14% movement speed while in cat form. If this gets me even one extra run each night, that means more items, more listings, and more chances to sell. I think it was well worth the time. After finishing the quest chain in Silithus, I had a little time at the end of the night, so I ran a quick 30-minute Twilight Cultist farm. I actually lost the footage from this, but the entire farm was pretty uneventful. Nothing was dropping, and I was just about to call it quits when out of nowhere, a Cloak of Flames dropped. Like most high-value transmog, this is not something I expect to sell quickly, but it's definitely one of the better items we've picked up so far. In the end, we added just 3 items, including the cloak, so without that drop, this would have been a pretty unproductive 30 minutes. With our speed set in place, it's time to tackle the first dungeon of the week, Maraudon. It's a good thing too, because Maraudon is a long one. To speed things up even more, I grabbed some fried bonefish off the auction house and headed for Desolace. This was actually my first time running Maraudon for Transmog, so I didn't really know what to expect. I knew it shares a loot table with RFD, RFK, and Dire Maul, but it doesn't really have any standout drops of its own, so I wasn't expecting anything too crazy. But pretty early on, I started to notice something. The very first pull dropped an item, which is always a good sign, and from that point on, it just felt like Maraudon kept feeding me items. Not every pull, but often enough that it never felt dry. After a couple of runs, it became pretty clear what Maraudon actually is. It's not a place you come for big drops, it's a place you come to build inventory. My bags were filling up so quickly that I had to make a few detours to a vendor just to keep going. Each run took about 7 minutes, which is a little long, but it never felt slow. There's very little downtime in Maraudon, and you're basically chain pulling the entire time. After each run, I was walking out with around 10 items worth keeping, which adds up really fast. I got through about 7 runs in 50 minutes before calling it a night. But I knew I had to keep going, so I ran it for another 30 minutes the next day. And by the end of it, Maraudon gave us 111 items, a ton of herbs to sell, and 6 lockboxes. I don't see Maraudon recommended as a top transmog farm, but if you're just starting out and looking to build inventory, this is a really solid option. The value per item is decent, but more importantly, there's just a ton of it. And at about 7 minutes per run, you can keep chaining runs without ever hitting the lockout timer. All said and done, Maraudon brought our item total up to 451. With that kind of volume, the Warband bank started to fill up pretty quick. I spent a good chunk of time just moving items over to my bank alts. I don't really want to spend 25,000 gold unlocking another tab this early in the run. And at the same time, the lockboxes I've been collecting have started to pile up. I'm sitting on 25 of them now, and they're just taking up space. So at this point, it made more sense to pause the dungeon farming for a bit and deal with that. To open them, I needed a higher level rogue. So I leveled up Mog Bank 1 from level 10 to level 15 so he could open them. It took about an hour. Again, not the most exciting use of time, but at this point it's just part of the process. Once that was done, I opened all 25 lockboxes. In total, 13 of them had items worth keeping, which isn't huge, but every little bit helps. And, more importantly, it frees up space so we can keep farming. Okay, back to business. It's time for Sunken Temple. This place is mostly known as a skinning farm, but it does have a few very rare high-value drops. Things like Deathblow, Winter's Bite, or Stealth Blade, which is currently listed for over 575,000 gold. So there's definitely some huge potential here. The good news is the runs are incredibly fast, right around 3 minutes each. The problem is, that only matters if something actually drops. I ran it 10 times in 30 minutes, and after the first few runs, it was already starting to feel pretty dry. By the end of it, I walked away with 3 items worth keeping. 3. Thankfully, it only cost me 30 minutes, but this is one of those farms where speed doesn't really help you if the drop rates aren't there. So for now, this one's probably not going back on the spinner. Finally, we set our sights on Wailing Caverns. This shares a loot table with Black Fathom Deeps, which treated us well back in episode 1, so I'm curious how this compares. There aren't any standout blue drops here, so this is probably more of a volume play. But Wailing Caverns does have a special drop, one we haven't seen before. A rare battle pet, the Deviate Hatchling. It's not exactly Transmog, but it's in a similar vein, and I'm definitely curious to see how the pet market compares if we get lucky. Midway through the first run, it's already pretty clear that this is not going to be another Maraudon, but it's definitely better than Sunken Temple. I guess you could call it a slow drip. I'm getting about 4 to 5 items per run, and each run takes around 7 minutes. Nothing crazy, but it's steady. And as expected, nothing too notable is dropping. Until the 5th run, when we finally saw the Deviate Hatchling. And now, my friends, we're officially pet traders. If it sells. I ended up squeezing 7 runs into about 50 minutes. I probably could have done one more, but at that point, it just didn't feel like a great use of time based on what I'd been seeing. The results were 29 items and the hatchling. This is a middle-of-the-road farm, not something I'd prioritize if given the choice. I also picked up 6 stuffed Deviate Scale pouches. These are always fun. It's like RNG on top of RNG. The loot table is small, but everything has decent value. Let's see how we do. Alright, Fangblade on the first rip. Not huge, but it's always fun to see a blue. No way, 2 in a row. One of the leather working patterns, nice. And the other pattern on the last bag. That's actually a really solid haul. The pouches added 6 more items, bringing our total from Wailing Caverns to 36, and 503 for the series. Let's get these listed, and go see how the mailbox is looking at the end of week 3. Let's open it up and see how we did. Right away, I'm seeing a Transmog sale for 2,400 gold. I love to see that. It looks like we also sold some ornate pauldrons for 33 gold. I'm not sure how that happened, but I don't love to see that. And we sold an engineering recipe for 3,600 gold. That's awesome. Let's collect this and see how everything adds up. That puts us at 6 hours played this week, which is definitely heavier than normal. And that brings our total time played to 14 hours. This week, we added a total of 166 new items to the auction house. After the 3 sales we made, we ended the week at exactly 500 auctions listed. So we are now officially halfway to the first goal of 1,000 items listed. We had a pretty good week for gold making as well. We sold 9,840 gold worth of items, including 3 Transmog items. I'm classifying patterns, recipes, and pets as Transmog for the sake of simplicity. On top of the auction house sales, we got 500 gold doing the speed set quests, 1,000 raw gold from kills, and 3,557 gold from vendoring items from the dungeons, which brings our total for the week to 14,901 gold, which is almost double what we did last week. Our total gold for the series is up to 65,385 gold. Before spinning for next week, I did make a couple of changes. I've been tweaking the spinner a little bit each week, but I think I'm zeroing in on the final list. First off, no repeats until we do a full world tour. I removed the dungeons from week 1 and 2, so we currently have 7 options for next week. I'm really hoping to get Scarlet Monastery since I just find the place super nostalgic to my vanilla days and enjoy the runs. Beyond that, I'm open to anything. Let's see where we're going first. Ah, so close to landing on Scarlet Monastery. First stop next week will be Razorfen Crawl. Next up, Uldaman. Very nice. Uldaman has a handful of drops worth over 1,000,000 gold. I've never seen one, but maybe this is the week. Last one. Yes! Scarlet Monastery, let's go! Looking at the list, I also realized I haven't unlocked Classic Skullomance yet. That takes a little bit of setup, so I'll circle back to that in a future week. We're starting things off in Razorfen Crawl. Now, RFK is very similar to Razorfen Downs. The loot table is slightly different, and it has its own share of unique blue items. Things like the Wolfclaw gloves or Pyson's old greatsword. The route is simple. Just follow the path and kill everything you see. Then dreamwalk out, reset, and repeat. Early on, the runs feel pretty standard. I'm picking up a handful of items each run, but nothing that really stands out. And it actually reminds me a lot of the Wailing Caverns runs from last week. It's steady enough that I'm still adding to the pile, but there isn't much happening during the run itself that makes it feel especially memorable. But RFK has something that Wailing Caverns does not. Deep in the cave, just off the main path, sits an enormous bullfrog. That's literally its name. It doesn't look like much, and it isn't even hostile, but savvy adventurers know what makes this bullfrog special. The enormous bullfrog has a nearly 100% chance to drop a world drop blue item from a pretty broad loot table, and even though the items themselves aren't especially valuable because they're so easy to get, there's enough variety there that the end of each run still feels a little different. You know you're getting a blue, but you still don't know which one it's going to be until it drops. Each run takes less than 5 minutes, so it doesn't take long to hit the instance lockout. After 40 minutes, we walk away with 48 items, including 6 BOE blues, and thankfully no duplicates. Nothing flashy, but no real downtime either. Just steady progress. Next up, Uldaman. This is a very different kind of farm compared to Razorfen Crawl. Where RFK had a built-in floor and a steady stream of items, Uldaman sits on the opposite end of the spectrum. This is one of those dungeons where a single drop can be worth more than 10 times what we've made so far, and that possibility hangs over every run. There are a handful of items here worth several million gold, and even though I've never personally seen one drop, just knowing they're on the loot table changes how the dungeon feels. A true gambler's paradise. The runs themselves are slower, and it's easy to get turned around, so right away it feels like more of a commitment. You're spending more time on each run, clearing through longer sections, and naturally that raises the question of whether the extra time is actually worth it. After the first couple of runs, the answer isn't immediately obvious. The items are coming in, but nothing really stands out, and it starts to feel kinda grindy. But at the same time, there's always that underlying tension. Every pull has a chance, every chest could be something, and even though nothing has dropped yet, it never really feels out of reach. That's what makes this type of farm so interesting, because you're not continuing based on what you've already seen. You're continuing because of what might happen next. As the runs go on, we do start to see some value. We pick up an obsidian cleaver, worth about 46,000 gold, a stone vault shiv at around 10,800, and an energy cloak for roughly 24,000 gold. None of these are the big ticket items Uldaman is known for, but they're enough to keep things moving and justify the time spent. At that point, it becomes pretty clear what this dungeon is. Uldaman is a high variance farm where you're trading consistency for upside, and whether or not it pays off in any given session is completely out of your control. 10 runs took about an hour and 15 minutes, and we added 80 items to the auction house. No massive hits this time, but it never really feels like you're that far away from one. Last stop this week is Scarlet Monastery, but before we can even get started, there's a bit of setup involved. To unlock the classic version of Scarlet Monastery, I need a Scarlet Key. Thankfully, this can be sold on the auction house, so that's where I went. And they're 2,800 gold, which is way more than I want to spend on this key. So instead, let's switch over to our handy pal, the Undermine Exchange, and see if we can find it cheaper on another server. Just like that, 800 gold on Ragnaros. I don't have characters on Ragnaros, so meet Keybro. Logged in, bought the key, Warband Bank, Keybro deleted, thanks bud, and we're in business. With the key secured, it was finally time to head to Scarlet Monastery. One quick note before getting started. The key does not need to be in your bags to unlock the classic version of the dungeon. In fact, I'd recommend leaving it in your bank. The reason for that is once you have the key, you can loot it once per week and sell it on the auction house. But since it's a unique item, you won't be able to loot it if it's already sitting in your bags. So the first thing I did was run library to grab another Scarlet key that I can sell, which should cover the 800 gold we spent to get here in the first place. After that, I settled into the actual loop for the farm, rotating between Armory and Cathedral and resetting after each pair of runs. Scarlet Monastery is one of those places that almost feels too good to be true for Transmog. The runs are smooth, the layout is efficient, the design and vibe is nostalgic and unique, and if that wasn't enough, the loot table has some absurdly high-end items on it. Things like Fight Club, which people debate the existence of, can sell for gold cap. So even though that kind of drop is incredibly rare, it's enough to make every reset feel a little more interesting. There's very little wasted motion in Scarlet Monastery, and once you get into the rhythm of it, you're basically just chain pulling from one end of the dungeon to the other, resetting and doing it over again. It never really drags, which matters a lot when you're repeating something 10 or more times in a row. What stood out even more though was the item volume. Not every pull was dropping something worth keeping, but often enough that the bags were filling at a pace that felt very familiar. After a few runs, it started to remind me a lot of Maradon. Not because the dungeons are similar, but because they create the same feeling that inventory is building so quickly it's almost out of control. That's what really makes Scarlet Monastery so strong. The ceiling is obviously there, and knowing that something ridiculous could drop at any point absolutely adds to the appeal. But even when that doesn't happen, the dungeon still performs. You're not relying on one miracle item to justify the time. The volume alone does a lot of the work. By the end of the session, that's pretty much exactly how it played out. We didn't hit any of the crazy lottery ticket drops, but we still picked up some solid pieces along the way, including 2 Scarlet wrist guards, worth about 3k each, 3 Scarlet belts around 1100, and 1 Scarlet gauntlets, worth about 7500 gold. 10 runs took about 57 minutes, and we walked away with 88 items, which makes this one of the best farms of the series so far, right up there with Maradon. No huge jackpot this time, but it didn't need one. Scarlet Monastery just delivers. Alright, let's get everything listed and check the mailbox, which I completely forgot to record this week. So instead, let's go straight to the recap. I played about 3 hours this week, bringing the total time played for the series up to 17 hours. We added 216 new items to the auction house, which brings our total listed to 708. And on the gold side, we brought in 21,262 gold this week, bringing our total for the series to 86,647. So overall, a really strong week. This week is a little different because we've reached the end of the list, and there are only 3 dungeons left to run. Each one has its own unique gold-making opportunities, so let's jump right in and see how we do this week. We're starting things off with Shadowfang Keep, which is a fast, repeatable dungeon with a pretty straightforward route. The layout is linear, the runs are quick, and on the surface, it feels like something that should be able to generate steady volume over time. At the same time, this place is home to a few extremely valuable drops, like Duskbringer or the Necrology Robes, both of which can be worth well over 1 million gold. The catch is that those prices exist for a reason, as you can see from the extremely low drop rates. Early on, the runs are easy enough. The RP section at the beginning is annoying, but beyond that, it's a very quick run. We move quickly from pole to pole, reset, and jump right back in, and it doesn't take long to settle into a rhythm where everything feels efficient. Some runs give us a handful of pieces, others feel almost empty, and even though we're moving quickly, it doesn't feel like we're actually making any progress. The runs were pretty uneventful, so we'll just skip right to the end. After 10 runs in roughly 30 minutes, we walk away with 25 items. On its own, that's not terrible, but it's not enough to justify the pace, especially because we can't run any other dungeons due to the lockout timer. Basically, Shadowfang Keep is a farm where the value is tied to a few extremely rare drops, and without them, the runs feel like a bit of a waste of time. Next up, Gnomragon. Gnomragon is a bit of a trek as a Horde player, since we have to fly from Duskwood, but after a few minutes, we're ready to head into the... Okay. Let's try that again. As I was saying, Gnomragon has several unique drops that don't show up anywhere else in the game, and that's what makes it interesting. Plus, they have some of the coolest names in the game. Items like the Vibroblade, Gizmotron Mega Chopper, and High-Tech Supergun all come from here, and if they drop, they could potentially move us closer to that first token. The dungeon itself is on the longer side, with each run taking around 10 minutes. I bet I could get that down to 7 minutes with a complete speed set, but I'm not ready to drop a ton of gold on speed items. After the first run, I realized I'm kind of an idiot. Apparently, there's a teleporter in Gromgol that takes you straight here, which would have been nice to know before flying across the world and getting killed, but at least getting in and out is a lot easier now. Now, there's also one specific drop I'm hoping to see, the Dark Iron Leather. It only comes from the Dark Iron agents at about a 1% drop rate, and there's only about a dozen of them in the whole instance. But if it drops, it tends to sell pretty quickly, which would make it a nice bonus alongside the usual Transmog pieces. Honestly, most of the early runs were feeling pretty average. The greens were stacking up, but nothing really stood out, and it started to feel more like one of those farms where you're just slowly building inventory without much happening in the moment. Then, 55 minutes in, we finally struck gold with the Petrol Spill leggings. I was actually planning to call it quits after this exact run, but because of the drop, I decided to squeeze in a couple more runs before calling it a night. And I'm glad I did, because just a few runs later, I picked up a Supercharger Battle Axe, which honestly saved the runs from being a bust. By the end of it, I spent about 90 minutes in Gnomragon and walked away with 62 items, including 2 Petrol Spill leggings, 2 Supercharger Battle Axes, and 1 Gizmotron Mega Chopper, all of which dropped after I had already been in here for an hour. It just goes to show you that you just never know if that high-ticket item is 1 kill away. And those Dark Iron Leather I talked about earlier? We got 7. I'll only keep 3 of them, but I am wondering if the drop rate on Wowhead is accurate. Now, I don't know if these results are typical, and the first half of the runs were pretty uneventful, but once those bigger items started to show up, the whole session felt a lot more worthwhile. It's definitely slower than some of the other farms, but when it hits like this, it's hard to complain. Our last stop this week is Dire Mall. Like Scarlet Monastery from last week, Dire Mall is split into 3 separate instances, north, east, and west, all sharing the same green loot table. For this week, I'm focusing entirely on Dire Mall North, because it has something the others don't. The base loot table is nothing special. It shares a table with Razorfen Downs, and there are only a couple of unique blue items, so if you were just running this for the gear alone, it probably wouldn't stand out. But that doesn't mean Dire Mall is not worth running. It has some interesting secrets of its own. The route is really simple. Grab everything in the opening sections, group them up near the stairs, and use line of sight to pull them together before clearing it out. It takes a few minutes to grab everything, but you'll see why it's important to do it this way in a few minutes. From there, make your way further into the dungeon, where you'll find a goblin named Not Thimblejack, and he is the reason why we're here. There's a special item that can drop here, called the Gordok Shackle Key. It has a small chance to drop from any mob, and the final boss guarantees 1. Each key can be turned into Not in exchange for Not Thimblejack's cash. But here's the catch. The key is a unique item, so every time you find one, you have to run it back and turn it in before continuing. It slows things down a bit, but this is always worth your time. There's also one other item I am hoping to see, a thoroughly read copy of Nat Pagel's Guide to Extreme Anglin. It doesn't drop from any mobs, but instead spawns somewhere in the dungeon, and I've never actually seen one before. The runs carry on as normal, the greens are steady, and we're getting 1 to 2 keys per run and building up a nice collection of caches. In my 7th run, I actually got 6 keys, which is kind of insane. I've never had anything like that happen before. It was a hassle to run back and forth over and over again, but like I said earlier, it's worth the extra time. And what have we here? A dusty tome that I don't recall seeing before. Could this be what I'm looking for? I'll come back to this once I've dealt with everyone. And there it is, my first copy of a thoroughly read copy of Nat Pagel's Guide to Extreme Anglin. LootAppraiser is showing a value of 10,000 gold, which I'd be very happy with. 2 runs later, and I found it again in the same spot. Very nice. By the end of the session, I completed 8 runs in just over 1 hour, and have 55 items to show for it, including the 2 Nat Pagel books. We also have 18 caches from Knot, and each one has a very low chance to contain a pattern for a rare cloak, the Hide of the Wild, Shifting Cloak, and Chromatic Cloak. There are a few other blue patterns, but most of the time, you'll just get basic crafting materials. So without further ado, let's see what our luck has in store for us. No way, come on, the Hide of the Wild on the very first box. What are the odds of that? I promise you, this is not normal. Let's keep going. Boom, Swift Flight Bracers for 20k. Alright, Girdle of Insight for 23k. Another Swift Flight Bracers. Nothing. And another Swift Flight Bracers. I hate to say it, but I hope I don't get a 4th one. Nothing. Nothing. And the last one, nothing. So there you go. 18 boxes gave us 4 patterns, including the Hide of the Wild, which completely carries the run. That wraps up the runs for this week. Let's head over to the mailbox to see how we did. As usual, we're seeing a lot of trade goods sales. But a few Transmog pieces came through as well, including the Scarlet Key from last week. We bought one for 800 gold so we could access the dungeon, then looted a second one that we just sold a week later for 4,750 gold, which is a great return. With that in mind, I'll probably keep one in stock going forward. We also had a few sales on the other bank alts, so we're finally starting to see some daily sales as we get closer to 1,000 items. Let's recap this week. This past week, I played for 3 hours, which brings our total for the series to 20 hours played. We added 153 new items to the auction house, bringing our total to 861, and we earned 26,865 gold, bringing our total up to 113,512 gold, which puts us just shy of halfway to a token. Instead of looping back through everything again, I want to try something different and see if the open world can carry us the rest of the way to 1,000 items. At this point, I'm close enough that every decision matters a little more, so let's get into it. We're kicking things off in my favorite spot in the Northern Barrens. We've been here a few times already, and it's been consistently solid, so this feels like a good place to set the baseline. The loop is simple. Fly from demolisher to demolisher and just keep killing and looting. There's very little downtime, and it's easy to run this on autopilot and watch the loot pile up. The drops here all have decent value, so this place is quality and quantity. I ran this for about an hour across 2 sessions and walked away with 61 items, which pushes us to 922 total. We're really getting close to that milestone now. Next up is Grim Totem Post in Stone Talon Mountains. There's an ongoing battle between the Grim Totem tribe and Horde forces, and the density is high enough that this looks like an area that could be really good. The greens I'm seeing have good values, and there's a wide coverage area, but it only took about 4 minutes to clear everything out, and they're not respawning. So I wait. A few minutes later, things start coming back, and I run it again. But I'm quickly left without anything to kill. Although there are a ton of mobs here, the respawn timer kind of kills the potential this place may have had. After a couple of loops, it's feeling like I'm spending more time waiting than actually killing. And even when things are working, the drops just aren't coming in fast enough to justify staying. At this point, it's probably best to move on. From Stone Talon Mountains, I head over to Slitherblade Shore in Desolace. This one caught my attention because it's supposed to be a hyperspawn location, which could mean non-stop killing and steady drops. And that does appear to be the case. There's a small loop where you can just keep running in a circle and they respawn before you finish the circle, so it has literally zero downtime. I ran in circles for a few minutes and let them pile up before looting them in big groups. But after 20 minutes, I have 5 items to show for it. Even with the hyperspawn, it's worse than Stone Talon Mountains. Not surprising considering how hard open world farming got nerfed. The killing never stops, but the loot just doesn't keep up. Let's not waste any more time here and see what else the world has to offer. From Desolace, I head to Duskwood. Getting here is easy as a druid, and I'd seen a few mentions of the Tranquil Garden Cemetery as a decent spot. Let's go check it out. The mobs are a bit spread out, but they respawn quickly, so it's not much worse than being in a dungeon. But after just a few minutes, I'm not really seeing any results. Greens are dropping, but they aren't worth posting, and with a few other players moving through the area, it starts to feel a little contested. So I head west to Raven Hill. Okay, this place feels better already. Well, for a moment, then nothing. This is a familiar pattern at this point. You get a quick burst of drops, and then it just dries up. Let's head into the crypt, because if Duskwood has one last chance to redeem itself, it's probably going to be somewhere dark, cramped, and full of things that should have stayed dead. Deep inside, there's a spot where silent shades hyperspawn, and you can basically stand still, turn in a circle, and kill everything with moonfire. Mechanically, it's as close to perfect as I've ever seen. So I gave it a few minutes, let the mobs pile up, and then loot everything at once. One item. That's enough Duskwood for now. I'm starting to feel the pressure now, but I've still got a few tricks up my sleeve. So I head to Tanaris, but it's not what you're thinking. Just outside Zul'Farrak, there's a graveyard where each grave spawns a zombie when opened, and the area is large enough that we can just run loops non-stop. By the time I finish opening the last grave, the first one is already back. And this place is actually showing some promising signs. I've looted 2 items in the first minute, which is more than I saw in some of the previous farms combined, and the pacing allows for 0 downtime. Everything here shares the Zul'Farrak loot table, and even the baseline drops have decent value, so it finally feels like I'm making progress again. I did this for about 20 minutes and walked away with 20 items before calling it a night. Then the next day, I came back for another short session and added 9 more. So while it may not be the greatest farm in the world, this one actually does feel viable. Since I was already in Tanaris, I figured I could quickly fly right over to Silithus for another familiar spot, the Twilight Base Camp, where I immediately ran into competition. But that's actually not a bad thing here. Since loot is individual, grouping up just increases efficiency. So I invite Heldar to a group, and we start clearing together. This is a popular group farm among Transmog farmers because the drops are solid and the camp hyperspawns, so there's zero downtime. Heldar and I are locked in and murdering everything in sight. After about 50 minutes, Heldar heads out, and I stay for a bit longer before wrapping things up with around 10 items. Honestly, not very impressive, but it was nice to have some company for once. Shout out Heldar. Feeling a bit pressed for time, I head back to the Barrens, but this time I want to try something different, the Sludge Fen. The Sludge Fen used to be one of the best open world farms before the nerfs. Now, well, we'll find out. Early on, it's looking promising, but we've seen this trend before. And nothing. Let's head over to the spot that never fails. That's more like it. At this point, I'm not really experimenting anymore. I'm just trying to get across the finish line. And after about an hour, we finally get there. 1,031 items. That's the milestone. And it actually feels really good to have crossed this first checkpoint, even though we still have a long way to go to buying the token. We now have the inventory. Let's go check out the mailbox. On Mogbank 1, we've had 47 sales this week. As usual, we're seeing a lot of trade goods right away, but scrolling down, there are a handful of Transmog sales. And look at that! We sold the pattern for Dusky Boots. If you remember, we picked this up in the very first episode in Razorfen Downs, so it took almost 6 weeks to finally sell, and that's at a 75% discount. Even at a steep discount, I can't complain about a 50k sale. Mogbank 2 is getting about 1 sale per day as well. While nothing huge is selling over here, it all adds up. And Mogbank 3 had 3 sales as well. Let's collect this and tally everything up. I played for about 4 hours this week, bringing the total for the series up to 24 hours. We added 170 items to the auction house, and after the sales we made, we currently have 1,004 items listed on the auction house. After all repairs and listing fees, we added 59,754 gold this week, making it the best week of the series and bringing our total gold to 173,266. At this point, the first phase of the run is done. Last week, we achieved the first goal of getting 1,000 items listed on the auction house, and the plan now is kind of wait for the auction house to do its thing. But that doesn't mean we're going to sit on our hands this week, and I want to take you on a new Transmog-related adventure that I hope you find interesting. First things first, now that we have 1,000 items on the auction house, we can be a little more picky with which items we're keeping, so I'm adjusting my loot appraiser threshold from 500 gold up to 1,000 gold. I've been grinding and farming Transmog for 6 weeks, and while we finally have a lot of inventory and sales to show for it, Mogbro is still looking pretty bland for a Transmog farmer, so let's see if we can do something about that. We need to look the part, right? Since I spend the majority of my time in cat form, that's what I'll focus on, and I love the Fire Cat appearance from the Firelands raid. To unlock the appearance, all I need to do is loot Fandrel's Flame Scythe from Majordomo's Staghelm in the Firelands raid from Cataclysm. We can run this on normal and on heroic, giving us 2 chances to get it each week. Let's head in and try this out. With no time to waste, I run straight to Alice Razor to start the fight. I get 3 feathers to trigger the flying mechanic, and fly right over the lava moat to the platform where Staghelm is. Those of you familiar with this are probably facepalming right about now. Now, this is a legitimate skip if you're farming Ragnaros for the Firehawk mount, but I'm not farming the Firehawk mount, and Staghelm only spawns if you kill all of the preceding bosses. So, after piecing that together, I jump in the lava and do it the right way. Run clockwise, first to Bethtalak, the spider boss, kill everything on the way because we need to spawn the boss Shanox in order to get to Staghelm. After killing her, continue clockwise, killing everything, and head for Balrog. Normally, I'd head to Alice Razor next, but you saw what happened there, so instead I keep killing things to spawn Shanox as I head towards Lord Rhyolith. I dispatch him easily, and all that's left to do now is get Shanox, which only took one additional group to spawn. Run back towards Balrog, kill Shanox, head to Balrog's corpse and use the orb to summon the bridge, and now we can finally try our luck at the Flame Scythe. Which, naturally, we do not get. All in all, this only took like 11 minutes, so it's really not that bad. And I can still try it on Heroic, so I come back in and do it again on Heroic, but this time in the correct order without any shenanigans. But alas, still no Flame Scythe. Oh well. I'll try again next week. Side note, if you have alts, you only need to loot this on one of them. Since I'm doing this challenge as if I'm solo with no alts, I won't do that, but if you are pursuing the Firecat form for yourself, definitely do this on all of your alts. With that detour out of the way, let's get back to transmog farming. Up until now, the series has been mostly about building volume. Build inventory, keep listing items, hope the mailbox starts slowly picking up speed. But now that we've run every dungeon worth running and have stockpiled 1,000 items, we can finally start chasing some of the bigger stuff. And if there's one place that has a decent chance at some bigger stuff, it's Naxxramas. Old Naxxramas. But unfortunately, we can't just walk right into Naxxramas. We need to unlock it. And let me tell you, it's a process. But first, let me tell you why we want to unlock Old Naxxramas. Once unlocked, each boss in Old Nax drops a Corruptor's Scourge Stone, and these can be exchanged within the raid for a Death's Bargaining Chip. The Death's Bargaining Chips are then used to purchase Dented Armor for 3 Bargaining Chips, or Slime-Covered Scrolls for a massive 12 Bargaining Chips. The Dented Armor can be interacted with to reveal a piece of armor that matches the type you bought. So if you buy Dented Raider's leggings, you'll get a piece of totally random leg armor. But there is a very small chance that you'll get a Lamented armor piece, which is used to create the original Tier 3 armor sets and are worth a boatload of gold. Like 250,000 to 500,000 gold depending on the piece. If you instead opt for the slime-covered scrolls, you will unlock an ancient design, pattern, plans, schematic, technique, profession recipes. The recipes are bind on equip and can be sold on the auction house and also tend to have extremely high sale values. The nice thing here is that you're guaranteed to uncover one of these epic recipes, but they obviously cost 4 times as many bargaining chips as the armor pieces, and they're just as difficult to actually sell as the Lamented gear. So, what's the better choice? Probably the plans, but I really don't know. What do you think? Anyway, as I mentioned, we need to actually unlock Old Nax in order to run it, so let's go through that process together now. Wowhead has a fantastic guide on this that I followed to the T, and it starts with unlocking Old Scholomance. That's right, the Scholomance that's currently available is the Mists of Pandaria version, and there's a whole process for unlocking Old Scholomance to go through as step 1. The very first step here is to secure the cosmetic toy, Krastenov's Bag of Horrors. This toy is obtained from Dr. Theolin Krastenov, a rare spawn in the current version of Scholomance, and he only spawns in Heroic, which means we can only attempt this once per day per character, and I only have 1 character. On my other account, it took me 3 days with literally 9 alts to get this guy to spawn, so I'm gonna give this a shot, but I might cheese this a little bit and either solicit help from a stranger or dual box with my main account to unlock this for the sake of expediency. enter Scholomance on Heroic and just run it as you normally would. Kill the Lich, and then make sure you kill the Phylactery here or you'll actually die. Don't ask me how I know. Keep moving forward and kill the second boss, Jandis Barov. In the next room, kill the Bone Weavers along the edge of the wall to summon the boss. Kill Rattlegore, and if the rare spawn is here, you will immediately see a message in chat and hear him say, "The doctor is here." No way. He literally spawned on my very first run. Walk into the next room in a slight daze, and take a moment to RP walk up to the boss for content before killing him and looting Krastenov's Bag of Horrors. Step 1 complete. With the toy in hand, finish up the run all the way through Dark Master Gandling. Once he's dead, go into the room on the upper floor south side. Find a small bone pile on the left-hand side of the room and use the toy. Let me hit you with some lore. Scholomance, which is the former manor of the affluent Barov family, was once a school of necromancy that is headed up by Dark Master Gandling, a successor to Kel'Thuzad. The family servants of the Barovs were used as experiments here, and their tortured souls are cursed to wander the destroyed town of Kerdero, while the Barov family members are now undead monsters residing within the school's halls. Ava Sarkov was the head maid for the Barov family. When the Barovs made a deal with Kel'Thuzad for immortality, Ava and her husband hid in the keep for 6 months before being found. Once captured, they were used for experiments by Dr. Theolin Krastenov, before being killed, revived, and fed to ghouls. This is why Ava appears trembling when we don Krastenov's appearance. We remove the appearance, and Ava will now speak to us. She tells us that it is of utmost importance that we find her journal, which she has hidden where it will never be found. She tells us that her journal contains detailed records of what happened in Scholomance, including the atrocities that occurred in the 6 months that she was in hiding. She says the world has to know what happened here, and tasks us with finding her journals and 5 candles of Kerdero, and bringing them along with something that belonged to her to a quiet place upstairs so that we can prepare a ritual. She doesn't give us any info on the ritual, and we don't think to ask. Before leaving, she mentions that Kerdero is not as abandoned as it appears, and gives us an inert spectral essence so that we can communicate with the other lost souls. It says we need to infuse it with 5 essences of undeath and 3 dark runes. With that, we pick up Ava's femur from the bone pile and make our way back to Scholomance Library to look for Ava's journal, which she has hidden behind a row of books on one of the bookshelves. Honestly, I don't know how anybody figured this out the first time. Okay, that's it for Scholomance. Now we need to get ourselves some candles. To get the candles, we'll need to exchange items with the spirits of Kerdero. At this point, the whole thing turns into a scavenger hunt across the Plaguelands, and if you're paying attention instead of going through the motions, no judgment, the entire experience is deeply disturbing. I mean, Arthas's entire story arc is disturbing, but we won't get into all of that here. One ghost wants her lost doll, another wants cigarettes, another wants the deed to Anderhall for some reason. I'm flying back and forth across western and eastern Plaguelands, and even briefly stepping into Stratholme to collect these items for the ghosts of Kerdero, and never once stopped to question whether the ritual we're preparing for is even a good thing. With all the items in tow, it's time to head back to Kerdero and trade them for candles. I also loot a dark rune, which reminds me that I need 3 dark runes and 5 essences of undeath to use the inert spectral essence that Ava gave us. So I run around Corrin's Crossing for about 15 minutes to collect those items. I use the inert spectral essence and create the spectral essence and fly back to Kerdero. This is a trinket that, when equipped, grants you the 6th sense and allows you to see dead people in Kerdero. And one by one, we trade them their items in exchange for the candles. We are finally ready to begin the ritual to unlock Old Scholomance. I know this sounds like a lot, but everything up to this point took 30 minutes, and the biggest wild card is that toy at the beginning. Head back towards Skullomance, but instead of turning left into the dungeon, turn right and walk into this room with bones and a sewer grate. Click Ava's journal in your inventory and get a cool RP shot for what is actually a really cool ritual sequence. Old Skullomance is officially unlocked. Now we can enter Old Skullomance and begin the process of unlocking Old Naxxramas, which was our intent from the beginning. Click the book and read the grim history of Skullomance. I think Blizzard did a really nice job here. It's like we're reliving the horrors of Old Skullomance through Ava's journal. Anyway, run the dungeon as normal. The route is a little different than the retail version, and the dungeon is much larger, but it's pretty straightforward. Find your way into the Great Ossuary and drop down one of the holes to where Rattlegore is. Here, on the southwestern bone pile, you will find a cracked Argent Dawn commission. We need 1 righteous orb and 4 true silver bars to repair it, so we hearth back to Orgrimmar to purchase these on the auction house. $53 gold later, and we have an Argent Dawn commission. We need to return to Old Skullomance and kill Dark Master Gandling. Be sure to equip the commission so that he drops a Dark Master Scourge Stone, which will start a quest that can be turned in at Light's Hope Chapel in Eastern Plaguelands. Turning this in will grant us the ability to gain Scourge Stones while the Argent Dawn commission is equipped. Now we fly to Stratholme. We grab a Stratholme holy water that we'll need later, and wander around until we find an Eye of Naxxramas, which will announce its presence by yelling, "The living are here," in chat. We find one after just a few minutes. Kill it, and loot the Ward of Naxxramas. This is where things get a little stressful. With the Ward and the holy water, head to the Crusaders Square and clear it out. Stand in front of the stairs and use the Ward. If done correctly, a portal will appear to our left in front of the closed gate. Once you throw the holy water on the portal, you get a 5-minute debuff, and that's your timer. We need to fully clear Undead Strath, open the gate to Rivendare, and kill him before the timer expires. And if you've ever done Undead Stratholme, you know this place isn't exactly quick. No time to waste, but stay calm. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. We have to kill every boss and the mobs inside each ziggurat in order to open up the gates to access Rivendare. There are 3 in total that need to be cleared out. Do it quickly and don't waste any time looting. The fried bonefish helps a lot. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. I get to Slaughter Square with 3 minutes remaining. Go, 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 go! Clear the courtyard, which summons Ramstein, and then wait for the Blackguard to come out. Come on, hurry, hurry, hurry! Kill them, and immediately run in and kill Rivendare. I knew I had it. I wasn't even worried. Head out of Rivendare's room, turn right to the gate, and find the Hand of Naxxramas behind the locked gate. When you approach, a special action button will appear that will turn it to dust, and we'll get an in-game message that we need to tell someone what we have discovered. That someone is Archmage Angela dos Santos in Light's Hope Chapel. Now, if you're like me and haven't done any questing in Eastern Plaguelands, chances are she won't be in Light's Hope Chapel and will instead be a little south at Tyr's Hand. We try to tell her what's happened here, but she basically laughs at us and assures us that Kel'Thuzad and the Lich King are no longer a threat or anything to be worried about. However, she does offer a quest where she tells us that while she does not believe us, she will enchant our Argent Dawn insignia so that we may enter Naxxramas and inspect it for ourselves. But we must also be at least honored with the Argent Dawn. And we're neutral. There's a relatively short quest chain in Eastern Plaguelands that will quickly get you to Revered, and it begins right at the bridge to Western Plaguelands with Fiona's caravan.
A few moments later.
Now that we're Revered, the quest from Archmage Angela dos Santos requires a few ingredients, so, you guessed it, back to Orgrimmar and the auction house. This one stung a little bit at 855 gold, but it is what it is. Back to the Archmage to turn in the quest, and we have officially unlocked Old Nexramas. About an hour and 15 minutes all said and done. Except, we're still not done. Remember what I said earlier about the lamented armor and slime-covered patterns? They're sold by Zacket Skull Smash within the Nexramas raid, but we first need to unlock access to him as well. To unlock Zacket, we'll need a black coffee, 2 Stratholme Holy Waters, 3 Dark Runes, 20 Invaders Scourge Stones from Stratholme, and 5 Corruptor Scourge Stones from Nexramas. So I head back to Orgrimmar. I really should have planned this better. And buy a black coffee from the auction house, and also train in fishing and grab a pole. I know this is a Transmog only challenge, and that does not allow professions, but I have to make a small exception here for fishing. I won't be using it to make any gold, just stick with me. Now I need to farm some Dark Runes, so I head back to Eastern Plaguelands. Yes, I could have bought them on the auction house, but I am cheap. Based on the earlier experience farming the essences of Undeath and Dark Runes, I figure this should take maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Or it could take 30 seconds. Alrighty then. Back to Stratholme for some holy water and to farm up the Invaders Scourge Stones. You get 1 per boss and need 20, so this took like 1.5 runs and about 10 minutes to get. Now we can finally enter Nexramas, which is done through this glowy black stone along the road to Stratholme. First task, get Zacket. Easier said than done. You see, Zacket Skull Smash is stuck way up in the rafters of Nexramas, and the only way to reach him is with a grappling hook, which we now need to create. I start in the Arachnid Quarter because we need Fairlena's sewing kit, which I believe has a 100% chance to drop if you don't already have it. Also, look out for frozen runes on the walls of this place. It's not Transmog, but it is available in the Pursuit of Transmog, so it's fair game in my book, and they sell for like 40 gold each. Every mob here also has a chance to drop a War-Torn Scrap, which sells for around 120 gold each. Anyway, we finish the Arachnid Quarter and pick up 3 of the Corruptor Scourge Stones, 1 from each boss. Next is the Construct Quarter. In the second room, there are several abominations and these poison vats along the wall, and hanging from one of them is a conveniently misplaced hook that we'll need to grab. The final piece to this entire puzzle is none other than fishing in the Ooze of Nexramas. You can do this in any ooze area, it doesn't make any difference. We're looking for the Abomination's Chain, and it only took us 3 casts to get it. With all 3 parts, we can use the items to create the makeshift grappling hook, which is also now unlocked for the entire account, so you only ever have to do this once, which is nice. Finish the Construct Quarter until you get to Thaddeus's room. Kill Thaddeus, but don't leave. Zacket is stuck way up in the rafters, high up in the ceiling here, and there's a very specific grappling hook route that needs to be followed in order to navigate to Zacket, which I'll show you here a little bit sped up. I can't claim credit for this. There's a very similar step-by-step video on Wowhead for how to traverse this parkour challenge. Once we finally get to Zacket, he's dead. We can interact with him or gently poke him, but that doesn't do anything. No worries, we can wake him up by dumping some Stratholme holy water on him, which he is not very happy about. Once he wakes up, he offers the quest Inconvenience Fee. He's upset that we woke him up by dousing him with holy water, and now we owe him. Thankfully, like all goblins, he likes bribes more than naps, and offers to forgive us in exchange for a variety of items. Thankfully, we've been following a guide, and we were prepared for this, and we can immediately turn in the Invader Scourge Stones, Corruptor Scourge Stones, Dark Runes, and Black Coffee, which will grant our account mutually beneficial transactions, and unlock the ability to exchange Scourge Stones for items with Zacket. Conveniently, he will also relocate to the entrance of the raid, so we'll never have to do this parkour thing ever again on any characters. If this is your first time seeing any of this, let me know in the comments if your jaw is on the floor the same way mine was. I've said it already, but from the beginning in Scholomance all the way up to unlocking access to Zacket, I am blown away by the complexity of the puzzle Blizzard set up, as well as the amount of trial and error and guesswork it must have taken to figure all of this stuff out and document it. This entire unlock process was seriously such a joy to complete. An absolutely amazing puzzle. This part took about 20 minutes, so all in, it took me less than 2 hours to go from absolutely zero progress to unlocking Naxxramas and the vendor, and it was honestly a ton of fun. From here, I spend another 30 minutes finishing the raid, and I have 10 Corruptor Scourge Stones now to show for it, which I convert to 10 of the Death's Bargaining Chips. Today is Sunday, which means the raid will reset in 2 days, so I decide to hold on to these bargaining chips for now, and we'll revisit Zacket later in the episode to make some purchases. For now, this concludes our Naxxramas section, but not the episode. I did do a few other things this week to share with you. Naxxramas isn't the only old raid with valuable loot. In fact, I think it's time for us to leave the Classic WoW expansion for what I believe is the first time this series, and head into the Burning Crusade, where there is a raid with an interesting angle for high-value patterns and plans. If you follow other gold farming channels, you already know I'm talking about Sunwell Plateau. Getting to Sunwell Plateau is super easy. From Orgrimmar or Stormwind, take the portal to Shattrath, and then look for the portal to the Isle of Quel'Danas. I'll explain what's so good about Sunwell while we travel there. Sunwell Plateau is a little bit unique for the series because we're not directly farming any transmog armor or weapons. Instead, we're hunting for rare patterns, and more specifically, some very rare engineering goggle patterns. These are sought after by both transmog completionists and achievement completionists, because these patterns are required for some engineering profession achievements, and the items they create are bind on pickup. That means the only way to get these goggles is to craft them yourself, and this drives up the price of the patterns immensely. That said, the drop chance on any one of these is around 0.05% or 1 in 2,000 kills. Also worth noting, the patterns and plans are the only valuable items here. We won't be getting any valuable transmog or materials here, so it's all or nothing, and why Sunwell is not worth a visit unless you build up the larger base inventory of transmog items first. Like other raids, Sunwell Plateau has a weekly lockout if you kill any bosses, so we'll only be killing trash mobs so we can run it multiple times each day. The runs take 3 to 4 minutes, so we'll hit the instance lockout timer after 10 runs, but at 30 to 40 minutes, it's a pretty easy task. The route is simple, just follow the path and kill and loot everything in sight, including the dormant Sunblade protectors. All in all, it's just under 4 minutes per run, and with fried bonefish and a more robust speed set, it would probably be under 3. Just make sure you don't kill any bosses. I ran this 10 times and, unfortunately, did not get lucky with any of the plans. We did pick up a few non-engineering plans, but they weren't very exciting. With a 1 in 2,000 drop chance, this isn't terribly surprising. I usually expect to see 1 plan per 10 runs, but today just wasn't our day. Later in the week, after the Tuesday reset, it's time to head back to Naxxramas to farm for more Scourge Stones. This clear takes only 20 minutes, and I skip a few bosses with really long RP sequences. Now, with 21 of the Death's Bargaining chips, it's time to make a decision about what to buy. We can get 7 dented armor pieces, or 1 slime-covered scroll, and 3 dented armor pieces. Given the guaranteed value from the slime-covered scroll, I think that would be the better choice, but if you know me by now, it's that I rarely make the optimal choice, and decide instead to gamble it all on the dented armor. Let's go! I grabbed 2 helms, 2 shoulders, 1 chest, and 2 legs. Wish me luck. Oh well, serves me right. There's always next week. With some time left this evening, I head back to Sunwell for 10 more trash runs to try our luck at the patterns. This is a very RNG heavy week for us. But Sunwell actually pays off, and we get our first major drop on the second trash run, the schematic for Sure Strike Goggles version 3.0, with a market value of 117,000 gold. Finally, the week doesn't feel like a total bust. On run 4, we get the jewel crafting design for the Amulet of Flowing Life, apparently worth 6,200 gold, but I'm always wary of rings and necklace values. Then, on the second to last pull of the 7th run, we get lucky again with the schematic for Hyper Magnified Moon Specs, with a market value of 140,000 gold. The last 3 runs are uneventful, but I'm already happy with this. It more than made up for the first Sunwell runs earlier in the week. The rest of my week was pretty busy with work, so I wasn't able to do any other farming, but I have built up a collection of 15 lockboxes, so let's open these bad boys and see if we get anything worth posting. It looks like I can't open one of these until I get to level 30, so I guess we're opening 14 lockboxes. Okay, nothing insane, but it all adds up to about 20,000 gold in market value. With that, let's head over to the mailbox and see how things are looking. Let's see how we did. As always, we're seeing some trade goods sales, including a nice pickup from the war-torn scraps we picked up in Naxxramas, and the encrypted Twilight text from last week's Twilight Cultist farm. Scrolling down a little further, we did have one nice sale of the Prospector's boots for over 15,000 gold. This doesn't look like the 80,000 gold we need to get the token, but let's collect this and the other Bank Alts mailboxes and tally everything up. This week, I played for about 4 hours, bringing the total for the series up to 28 hours. After sales and the very few items added, we're sitting at 1,031 listed items, so the inventory base remains strong. And for gold, we collected a total of 32,213 gold this week, bringing our total to 205,479. The token is less than 50k away, which could happen from just one lucky sale.
One eternity later.
Okay, let's see what we've got. Let's check it out. Will this be enough? Boom! We sold the Hide of the Wild. That'll do it. It's been 7 weeks since we started this journey. 28 hours played, thousands of mobs killed, over 1,000 items listed on the auction house, and 254,000 gold in the bank, with the token sitting at 251. Which means the Transmog token run has ended. We never discussed this metric, but at 28 hours played, I've averaged 9,074 gold per hour through this series. I still have a ton of items listed that will continue to sell in the coming months without any effort, but if you follow other gold guides, you'll know that 9,000 gold per hour is not impressive. Not at all. Still, it's been a really fun journey. we've explored many dungeons and open world farms, and even dipped our toes into some old raids in pursuit of rare and high-value items. But now, it's time to turn our attention to the next token run. For the next token run, we again put our lives in the hands of the spinner wheel, and I've been giving this a lot of thought as we got closer to the token. The Transmog run taught me something important. The challenge itself has to create interesting decisions. What to farm, where to farm, how to price things, what items to keep, and so on and so forth. With limited time each week, I can't really do something too restrictive that would take hundreds of hours to complete. And I also didn't want the answer to become sit at the auction house and flip items all day, because I think that would get old pretty fast, for both of us. So instead, I narrowed the next run down to 4 approaches that should all play very differently from each other. First, raw materials farming. Killing mobs for trade good items such as cloth, essences, or specialty items like the dark runes and frozen runes from last episode. Gathering and crafting. Since I'll be starting over from zero again, I can't do dual crafting. If we land on this one, I'll use a separate spinner to select from one of the many different gathering and crafting profession combinations. Dual gathering. If we land here, I'll do another spinner to identify which 2 gathering professions we'll focus on. Fishing and cooking. This might be extremely boring, but I'm hoping there's enough variety and gold-making opportunity for this to make for interesting content. I considered including decor only, as it's kind of a hybrid of gathering, crafting, and specialty sales, but ultimately decided to skip it this time around. Let me know if you think I should include it in the spinner next time. Personally, I would like to land on dual gathering. It would be a nice change of pace from the last 7 weeks, and once I build up the knowledge points, I think it would go really quickly. But alas, our future is not in our own hands. With that, let's see what Token Run 2 has in store for us. Raw materials. Alright, this run should offer a lot of variety. There are a lot of non-profession materials we can look for, and I already have a few thoughts on where to begin. 7 weeks ago, Mogbro began this journey with nothing but a dream, to one day become a goblin. And now that the token has finally been purchased, I think it's time for Mogbro to retire. I'm going to make a very poor financial decision and use the WoW token to pay for a name change. If Mogbro was built for transmog farming, then we're going to need somebody else for materials. Meet Mattbro, your humble materials farming adventure guide. Mattbro is going to be with us for the duration of this token run. After that, well, we'll see. Until then, happy farming, and remember, time is money, friends.